It's getting close and it's getting personal. I refer to the US presidential election, a week to go. And over the past week or so, the rhetoric has certainly been ramped up. Last week, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris accused her rival Donald Trump of being a fascist for the first time when she made a statement to reporters outside her official residence in Washington.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. And it is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Now, while Donald Trump has denied ever making those comments, a rally for his supporters at New York's Madison Square Gardens on Sunday night has been widely compared to one held there by Nazi supporters in 1939. As we reported yesterday, included a variety of controversial speakers and included this badly misjudged joke by the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, which was swiftly disowned by senior Trump campaign spokesperson.
There's a lot going on. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there.
Yeah, it's going to help the Latino vote, isn't it? Campaigning has continued overnight, Republican candidate Donald Trump being forced to deny having sympathies for Hitler or the Nazis, speaking at a rally in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the 7 key swing states in next week's election.
The newest line from Kamala and her campaign is that everyone who isn't voting for her is a Nazi. We're Nazis. Years ago, my father, I had a great father, he's a tough guy. He used to always say, never use the word Nazi, never use that word. And he'd say, never use the word Hitler, don't use that word. It's like, I didn't even know why, don't use that word. And then I understood it. And yet they use that word freely, both words. They use it, he's Hitler. And then they say, he's a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi.
It's not all plain sailing for Harris either. She was campaigning in another of those 7 swing states, Michigan, last night. Now, this state has a large Arab-American population, many of whom are angry with the US's ongoing support for Israel. The Democratic candidate was heckled by protesters chanting, Israel bombs, Kamala pays, how many kids will you kill today? At which point Harris paused her speech to respond.
And listen, hey, on the subject of Gaza, hey guys, I hear you. On the subject of Gaza, we all want this war to end as soon as possible and get the hostages out, and I will do everything in my power to make it so.
That chant, of course, has its origins back to Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Vietnam War. Do you remember that chant? Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids will you kill today? It lives on even now in 2024. Well, we're going to be speaking with key strategists from the Republicans and the Democrats in a moment. But let's get an overview from Sam Rosbottom, who's the Betfair spokesman, joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, one of those 7 key states. OK, a few days since we last spoke. How are the odds moving? Sam, morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Yes, hello from Iron City, where, like you mentioned, this is one of those absolutely critical battlegrounds, the keystone state, if you like. And people are saying whoever wins in Pennsylvania is going to ultimately go on and be the winner of this election. It is that key. But looking at who the punters are backing, and we've seen further backing for Donald Trump over the weekend, he is now into 4-7, which is his shortest odds that he has ever been at this point in a presidential campaign. So back in 2020, he was 2-1. A week to go. In 2016, he was 11-4. He's actually closing in on what Joe Biden was in the betting market at this point, 1 week out. So in 2020, Biden was around 1-2. Donald Trump not far off that. He's got a 64% chance, according to his odds now. Kamala Harris is out to 7-4, which is the biggest she's been since she's taken over from Joe Biden. So with 1 week to go, punters are pretty clear on who they see winning this one.
Sam, thank you. Sam Rosbottom joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the swing state. Thanks to our show sponsors, Betfair, the world's biggest betting exchange. A reminder, you need to be over the age of 18 to gamble and always play responsibly. Let's pick up with both sides and go first to Angie Wong, who is a US political commentator and Republican delegate from Florida. Thank you for taking the call in the early hours of the morning for you. Well, 7 days to go. You're in nightmare territory now, aren't you? One day there's suggestions that your candidate is supportive in some way of Adolf Hitler, and then we're hearing Puerto Rico described in these ways. How do you respond? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. We're quite comfortable here, actually. I'm here in Miami and in Tampa, where both blue cities just flipped for Republicans. Here in Miami, we're over 17 points up from 2020 when Joe Biden won this county. And we're hearing the same thing in Tampa and many parts of the U.S., including North Carolina and also in Arizona. I think President Trump is sitting comfortably. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris's closing argument is to call him Hitler and a Nazi. Not a very good look for her, especially since she can't give a definitive message about the Middle East and the Gaza conflict. I don't think President Trump, after everything he's gone through with lawfare and warfare, I don't think he cares about name calling.
Angie, you're really telling me that you've got no concerns over the Nazi suggestions of Nazi and that appalling joke about Puerto Rico. You don't see that as bumps in the road.
Look, I think the comedian was a poor choice for President Trump to have on stage, especially in New York City. Where
Why did he choose him? If he can't choose the right comic, how can he run a country?
Well, that's not fair. I think
Why?
The comic
This all
is
comes to decision-making, doesn't it, Angie?
Well, I've been to a lot of these rallies, and I will tell you a lot of it is scripted. I am very surprised that his team would choose something like that and know what type of script that he was going to say. If that was said off cuff, I don't know. But Senator Rick Scott came out today and said, "This is appalling. We don't want to make fun of Puerto Rico like this. We have a lot of Puerto Ricans here." So other politicians are apologizing for President Trump. Unfortunately, that is a mishap. But I do think that President Trump has done more for the Jewish population, who were part of the Madison Square Garden crowd, along with blacks and Asians. I don't know why you can call someone a Nazi in a crowd that was rainbow colored. It was very, very strange.
Angie Wong, thank you for taking the call early in the morning. I appreciate it. You're a Republican delegate in Florida. US political commentator, 13 after 7 here, and listening Drexel Heard, who's Democratic strategist, joining us from Los Angeles. Again, thank you to you also for staying up late or getting up early, whichever it is. So your candidate, with much of the world looking on, not all, but much of the world looking on with horror at the Republican candidate, why isn't yours streets ahead? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm in Frankfurt right now, so headed to the airport. But
you're on our time, then.
Listen, I'm on your time. Yeah,
almost.
Look, we've got about just under a week left, and Kamala Harris has her closing speech would be tomorrow in America off the ellipses, where, if you remember, on January 6th, where Donald Trump did ignite that insurrection. So she's giving that closing speech tonight to remind the American people what's at stake in this election.
But Drexel, why is she not ahead? You've got a guy who reportedly says he likes Hitler's generals. You've got a guy he books making appalling gags of Puerto Rico, and still in some areas it's neck and neck. Why is she failing to ignite the voters, do you imagine?
Well, look, our country is deeply divided. So that's not going to change, whether or not it's this election, 2020 election, 2032 election. We're going to continue to have close elections. So, look, the polls are going to say what they're going to say, but polls were wrong in 2016. We thought Hillary Clinton was up. The polls were wrong in 2020 when they thought Joe Biden was down. So I don't think the polls that we are hearing are not reflective of what's probably going to happen on election day. And I think these last few weeks, the American people have continued to see and been reminded about who Donald Trump is, the type of people that he is willing to bring around him, as you just said to your last guest. If he can't, if his team can't vet a comedian, and they vetted that speech, we know that they vetted that speech because they took out parts of that speech that he was going to say about Kamala Harris. So we know that his people let him say that on that stage. So, that's what we're looking at. That's what the American people have been reminded over the last few weeks.
Before I let you board that aircraft, Drexel, final point to the charge that Trump is putting out when he asks Americans, do you feel better now than you did 4 years ago? That's a tough one for Kamala Harris to take on, isn't it? Because people don't.
Well, you got to remember, we were in a pandemic 4 years ago, and I think people are looking at their pocketbooks coming out of a pandemic, right? And that's tough. That's a tough recovery. That's a tough 2 or 3 years that we had to, make the Democrats and Joe Biden had to pull the American economy out of Donald Trump's hole, right? So I think that over time, as we know, history has always been great under Democrats in terms of the economy, and we're going to start to see those gains, sooner rather than later, hopefully. But the American people are feeling that in their pocketbooks.
All right. Happy landings, Drexel Heard. Thank you. Democratic strategist who's based in Los Angeles but is flying from Frankfurt, Germany right now. So, over to you. If you had a vote, how would you have cast? What would you do next Tuesday? And this might be interesting. Did you go into the campaign favouring one side and have come out the other? I.e., did you go in thinking Trump was the future and now think it's Kamala Harris? And this idea of Hitler, whether or not he likes Hitler's generals. I'll give you the whole context of it, by the way. The person who's quoted as saying it is Chief of Staff saying, "Do you mean Bismarck?" Seems a bizarre exchange.